assessing threats, same thing, just going through all of those. And there's a fun section on how to assess future models
Mm-hmm.
and how to evaluate if it should be if you should test out a model, if it should be internal, external, or what was the other one?
Oh, geez, that's a good question.
Internal, external, or
Oh my gosh.
hold on, I think I just went by it.
I think.
Or autonomous, integrated, autonomous,
Oh,
or separated.
let's talk about those really quickly. Um,
Page 232 for those
yeah.
following along in the book,
Yep.
which I'm sure is everybody.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Everybody got the book before they started listening to this, right?
They
Mm-hmm.
read it before they start listening to this.
It would have been very smart if they read it before they started listening to this.
Right. And the three that did or have been the entire screaming the entire time. You guys are dumb.
Nah. Uh,
No, that's not what they meant. Did you
okay.
read anything?
Uh, okay. Oh my gosh. um. So part of the reason why they talk about these is that you can end up setting up uh, two business models working in conjunction with each other. Uh, and there's scenarios that you and I have talked about this a little bit in past episodes. There are
Mhm.
scenarios where you can do this safely, or you should do this because you're trying out a new product and you don't know how well that product is going to do. For one, like that's one scenario. Another scenario is you're not sure how to operate that product, or like what business model works best for that one product.
Mhm.
A good example of this was the Swatch
Yep.
company.
Seiko watch.
Yep. They were known for the longest time as like super high end
Mega
watches,
expensive.
and they wanted to break into a different market with cheaper ones. And they're the rather than affecting their high end brand name, they created essentially a completely separate business model within their company.
Internally to their resources.
Yeah,
Yep.
yep. And that's kind of where what we're talking about here is like there's multiple ways in which you can handle your the two business models. In that case, like we said, it's separate. Like separation is one way where the business models are very different from each other and do not overlap. They don't touch each other at all,
Mhm.
and that's to keep you safe. So if you have one business model that you know works and you don't want that to be affected by the other, separation is a really good idea. Um,
It
then
also
there's
helps if you're trying to test out a model that you want to move into the future.
that's a good point. You're
Right.
right.
So it doesn't just have to be because of risk or because of, it may or may not fit culturally, right? It can also be, okay, we're going to create this model and start building it and start utilizing it. And the expectation is that eventually we'll grow into it and replace the old business model. But it's maybe going to take a month, a year, 5, 10 years before we get there.
Mm-hmm.
And this is another way to handle moving targets for business models in a rapidly changing environment.
Yeah, yeah. In the tech world, like that would probably be a good one to do if you're trying to
Hmm.
change up your business model on that one.
Yeah,
That
a lot of companies do this organically. A lot of small startups do it
Google
organically.
Google is like probably the best at this. Um,
Hmm.
Amazon might be the second best, but Google is definitely the best because Google is for the longest time. I don't know that they do this anymore. I think they've become too massive and too much of a behemoth to be able to do this.
Hmm.
They would throw shit at the wall and see what sticks.
Hmm.
And we're gonna have to bleep that, unfortunately.
Hmm.
Um, So I think I say so. The example of that is I have two examples of this for y'all. There's this thing called Gmail, which practically everybody uses these days, or everybody should be very familiar with. That came out of a experimentation day. Google does these things where they allow their engineers to go and do experiments and play around and mess around with stuff. And a bunch of people went and did Gmail and created Gmail because they hated the traditional email systems and stuff. And that was great. It worked out. They put it out there, and it gained traction, significant traction.
Mhm.
A lot of that was because Gmail had a huge storage capacity from the very beginning, whereas a lot of other emails systems did not. And it was the storage capacity that was number one. But then what ended up happening is Google kind of wanted to go like several years later and iterate on that. And they created Inbox. I don't know how many people actually know about it or have heard about it, but Inbox was essentially a skin that lived on top of Gmail's system.
Mhm.
And it was a complete, it had very different principles behind it. And a lot of people really loved it and a lot of aspects about it. But eventually, what Google found and kind of said is like, oh, you know what? This isn't really working. So what they did is they got rid of that, took the lessons learned from Inbox and applied them to Gmail. So they kind of had separate business models. Another thing is, and I'm going way back. There was this product called Google Wave.
I thought you were about to
Uh,
say Merc.
no, not that one. Google Wave was Slack before there was Slack. Uh, Google kind of, I guess some people at Google sat and saw how awesome forums are for collaboration, but there were a lot of different problems with forums. Forums are very linear, and a lot of times conversations would not be linear within a forum, and so it would be hard to fully follow and understand what was going on. So Google Wave came in and they started creating like live chat forums and creating threads where people can jump in and talk about things. And then they kind of made it where integrate in with Google Drive, the docs and stuff. So then you could like talk all over the place. It was it was a phenomenal product. Slow, very slow, but it was a phenomenal product. But it just did not gain traction. And so they threw it out after a while. And then lo and behold, 5 years after that, Slack came out. But like the point I'm making with all of this is that Google kept those products in separate business models and separated them from other things because they wanted to see what was going to work and what was going to what they could learn from it and see if the product would actually continue. And a lot of them just don't. And you can see that. You can go and do a search online for like failed Google products, and you'll see a ton.
Yeah, it's a joke. And you know what? This is a strength and a weakness for Google,
Mm-hmm.
where people are like, you know what? I think it's a cool product, but I'm not going to get too invested because they too quickly shut down a project.
Yes.
And I think this really hurt Flutter for a long time.
And see in Flutter. Hmm, do we really want to go down that road?
Yes, yes, I do actually.
Uh,
Now that you ask.
Flutter is a cool concept in the sense that Flutter for those who don't know, ay, ay, ay. Okay, the holy grail within the mobile world or within the tech world is a single code base to produce three different products: web, iOS, and Android. It's the holy grail because then you don't have to employ triple the number three engineers. You only have to employ one engineer because they can write one set of code, launch the code, and it operates on 3 different platforms. Okay. Flutter, it was Google's major attempt at doing that. It's still around, still is.
Do they still lately people have said Flutter have been really, really amazing. I'm going to give it another try myself
Yeah.
actually.
I've tried it. I tried it. I just don't like it.
When was the last time you played with it? Because this
Not too
year it
long
came
ago,
out with
a
some pretty
couple years
cool
ago.
stuff.
The problem is that they are okay. So we're gonna continue. We're gonna continue down this.
Oh boy.
All right.
Like 2 years ago, people were coming to me because libraries stopped being supported,
Yes.
the momentum stopped,
Yes.
and people couldn't complete projects they started invested a lot into.
Yep.
And I was like, I wouldn't take on those projects,
Yep.
and I recommended them just start over in React Native or to go native.
Yeah.
And
So keep. We'll go.
I'll carry for a second. And it turned out to be that the to do anything meaningful, you had to use these libraries that stopped being supported, and you'd have to rewrite those libraries. And even in those some cases, you wouldn't be able to ever do because you didn't have the partnerships with those resources such as Plaid or Stripe or you name it, right? They just wouldn't let you do it, right?
Yep.
Because you don't have that kind of inside connection, or it take you too long to develop that, right?
Yep. So
You
to continue describing Flutter real quick, like Flutter is a really cool technology because what it does is it what a lot of the cross platform stuff does is it does what we call trans compile and then compiles the code into the app. So React Native, you're actually when you're writing stuff, you're actually not writing you're not actually working with the widgets on the screen that you're seeing. You're working with code that's going to write the code that operates the widgets on the screen. So React Native is written in JavaScript, and what will happen is when you compile it, is it'll convert that JavaScript into like Swift for iOS, and then it will take that Swift, and then it will um, compile that into the iOS app. And it's the same on for Android. It will compile JavaScript into Java, which will then get transcompiled, or which will get compiled into the Android app. And then React Native just works on web because the web is built on JavaScript. Flutter's different. Flutter like compiles into a binary, but the thing with Flutter is that what it does is it creates a canvas on the screen and then draws like its own widgets on the screen. So it's supposed to be a bit faster and a lot more flexible. Here's here's the problem. It's some of what you talked about. The number one problem is that they chose Dart as the language for Flutter. Okay. Google created Dart a long time ago as an attempt to usurp JavaScript. It never caught on. Dart is a terrible language. Like it's so, it's just not good to write or build or do anything in.
They should have just used Go.
Go is a wonderful language. Go is a great language. Or they should have used Kotlin. Part of the frustration, so like let me just give people a really good example. There's a lot of Android developers who just they became Android developers just to be Android developers because they knew Java, and they continued and they were working on stuff like that. The problem is that after a while, the Android developers like we have our gripes with Java. There's a lot of pain points with it. But then the Kotlin language came in, and for the vast majority of us, we all started working with Kotlin, and we're like, oh my gosh, I actually love to program because the language is a good language. There's a lot of really good things about it. Like, but But Dart, like trying to go and work in Dart is just awful.
Hmm.
It's just, it's so painful.
And for you iOS guys, uh, I Swift and Kotlin were developed basically together. There's a lot of similar minds working on it, and they learned a lot from each other. And
Yes.
some people say they kind of work together while competitively trying to outdo each other, right? But there was a collaboration there,
Yeah.
and they both kind of grew up together, at least to a certain stage in the beginning.
Yeah.
So they're both very modern, very powerful languages that have very similar um, approaches.
And still in a lot of ways they are still influencing each other. They're
I
going
think
back
so.
and forth constantly.
Yeah.
Which is how it should be. I think that that competition between the two of them is really nice and really important.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
yeah, and it kind of makes you see how there could be a path to a unified, beautiful language like Go.
yeah, I mean, Go is, like I said, Go is a great language. I could definitely see that happening at some point in the future.
And for
Um,
those who don't know, Go is basically what they should have done with C++.
yeah, because I, to be fair, C plus plus is a good language too.
It is
Like
a
that,
good language, and it was at the time.
yep. It's hard to work with now after
Yeah, well,
working
after
with all
getting
the.
spoiled.
Yeah, I've been spoiled by Kotlin. Kotlin is
Yeah, yeah.
Kotlin spoiled me. Um, but Flutter, the problem with Flutter is that, like, one, Dart, it was a bad choice. It's just such a terrible choice. The other is that you're trying to convince a lot of people who've already written their apps in native languages like Kotlin and Swift to
Hmm.
switch over to Flutter. So you're trying to get people to rewrite everything in a language that is terrible
Hmm.
on a platform that, as you pointed out, is not very well supported. Because this is the other issue. You'll get, like, this is the other, the one of the biggest issues with it is you'll get these big bursts where people are like, Flutter's awesome, and there will be like 6 months of people super excited about Flutter, and then they'll hit a point where it's like, oh no, I can't do what I want to do at all. Like the
Hmm.
newest feature, like some really awesome feature will come out in iOS, and Flutter will not be able to support it.
Uh-huh.
Or some really good feature will come out on in Android, and Flutter will not be able to support it.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it won't be supported for 6 months, a year, 2 years.
Recently,
It's
they resolved that by making it so you can directly um, develop in Swift and Kotlin straight to those components. So they found a way around it that people are excited about. The next problem that is that everybody understands that uh, Dart and Flutter are, you know, instant without notification away from being sacrificed to the it's not working good enough for us gods.
that's the thing. Like, so I okay, let me take a step back first off. That integration of being able to being able to work with native components, I'm going to be blunt. People being excited about that are idiots. Okay, I like you guys are idiots if you're excited about that stuff, because the problem is that React Native has been able to do that for a long time, and Xamarin was able to do that from the very beginning. Okay, now please tell me how many Xamarin developers are actually out there. Please tell me how many Xamarin apps are actually out there. I can tell you, like, I will tell you straight up, the vast majority of the projects that started out Xamarin are now native apps. Because the problem with with particularly with Xamarin, is that when they went in and started building things, when they started wanting to do certain things within it, they would have to go to the native components, and they would have to work on the native components. So
Hmm.
what you're going to see with Flutter is they essentially what they've done is they put the death knell in Flutter right now. Once you open up that doorway to be able to work with and build components natively, you've created the death knell to your language and your platform. Because what's going to happen is people are going to start realizing, oh wait, it's much easier for me to go and do this and work with this in a native aspect than it is to work with this in a cross platform aspect. So then people are going to be doing all of these things. It's
There's
it's
some of that. There's a
it's
lot of
dumb.
that.
It's dumb. I everything that I've seen with Flutter, I've seen with Xamarin. Okay, and I've also seen it with React Native. React Native is a different story because it's really good for creating rapid prototypes of your app like and building upon those rapid prototypes. But there's going to come a point in which you're going to hit a performance issue with React Native,
Hmm.
in which case most people are going to end up switching over to native apps and such. Let
Hmm.
me give you a really good example is the Notion app. Notion for the longest time was using React Native for things, and then they switched over to native, and they saw like an almost a 1,000% increase in efficiency. It was phenomenally insane. Um,
Oh,
so anyway, I had and so that's that. Now the other aspect of it is, I will give you the rumblings that I hear about in Google is that they are going to kill
is it?
Flutter at some point.
Oh
And
no.
a lot of it is because Google's like really invested in Android, and they're not investing as much money into Flutter. And
Uh huh.
so what they see then is the writing on the wall that at some point in the future, Flutter is going to go away.
Hmm. That's kind of freaky. The
Mhm.
if they burn this product, they're really going to take a big hit to their fan base.
They've done that over and over and over again.